Hello class, my name is Randy and today we're going to be discussing about the type of learners in education. We're going to be covering English learners, advanced learners, at-promise learners, and we're going to go ahead and finish off with learners with disabilities. So what is an English learner? Well, according to Web 2017, an English learner is a student who their native or first language is not English. And then many of these English learners have obstacles such as living in lower socioeconomic environments and not being able to speak English at home. Additionally, English learners who are immigrants face even more challenges like trying to assimilate to a different culture while also learning a new language. Many of these issues facing English learners can impede their overall learning in a classroom setting. Next, we're going to be going over some stats on English learners here in the United States. In 2020, the Department of Education estimated that there was roughly 4 million English learners who spoke Spanish at home. Additionally, it is believed that there are over 128,000 Arabic English learners in the States. And then rounding off, we have Chinese and Vietnamese students who make up roughly 4% of all English learners. As you guys can see up here, almost 76% of all English learners are Spanish speaking or speak Spanish at home. As we look over more stats of English learners, we can see that English learners represented 10% or more of public school students in 12 states. The highest being Texas with almost 18%, and then right behind was New Mexico and California with the highest percentage of English learners in their public school. Additionally, English learners go through 5 stages of language acquisition. First, they go through the pre-production stage, which is also known as the silent period. This is where students normally observe and try to develop an understanding of 500 words. They might not speak for several weeks or months, or only communicate with few basic words. Next, we have the early production period. This occurs when students understand roughly 1,000 words. They speak in 2-word phrases. They can demonstrate understanding or context of language. They answer with yes or no, and this normally lasts for 6 months. Next, we have the speech emergence stage. This can last up to a year, and this is where students develop over 3,000 words and begin to speak in short sentences or ask simple questions and engage in basic combo. And the last 2 stages of the language acquisition is the intermediate language proficiency and the advanced language proficiency stage. In the intermediate language, students have acquired up to or over 6,000 words that they understand and can understand more complex sentences and speak and write, but still have many grammatical errors within their sentence structure. This normally can take up to a year or if not a little longer. And then lastly, in the advanced language proficiency stage, English learners take several years to reach this stage, and in this stage their English is comparable to their grade level of native English speakers. All right, so now we're going to be going over some policies that help English learners that were implemented by the Department of Education. So the first program we're going to be diving into is the two-way immersion program. So according to Web 2017, in the two-way immersion program, lessons are taught in the native language and also taught in English. Teachers are flip-flopping half of the time speaking in English and another half speaking in the student's native language. Next, we're going to be going into the developmental bilingual program. This is where shifting away from the native language into English language. So maybe in the beginning of the year, teachers are flip-flopping through language, but closer to the end, children are being mainstream into 100% English instruction. And in the third, we have the transitional program. This is where teachers are 100% teaching in English and trying to mainstream all the English learners into only speaking English classes. And in the foreign language program, this is typically for students with no background of the English language, and most of the content in this program is aimed to focus English only. And lastly, we're going to be reviewing ELD program or an ESL program. Compared to the other programs, the goal of this is for students to leave their mainstream classrooms throughout the day and head to more of a one-on-one instruction to help with grammatical issues and to improve their communication skills in English. Normally, students in these classes or programs are fluent in English, but need additional help with their language proficiency. All right, so the next type of learner we're going to be discussing is an at-promise learner. So according to the Tax and Web 2017, an at-promise learner, or also known as at-risk student, is someone who is below grade level or at risk at being below grade level. In addition, they are students who are facing physical or mental health problems. And within the Tax Web suggests there are some key elements to success when dealing with at-risk students. So the first key to success is establishing a meaningful connection. This means gaining the trust of a child or a teen in order for them to come to you in confidence and go ahead and discussing issues that they may be going through. And next, we're going to be going over being honest and direct. Being honest and direct shows a child that you care for them and you can be honest with them when they are engaging in risky behaviors. The next key takeaway is to seek opportunities to empower the child or adolescent. This means many at-risk students have low self-esteem or may be going through internal challenges. As an educator, a best way to go about this is try and lift their spirits up and trying to engage in positive self-esteem practices with them. And then lastly, not being afraid to discuss heavy topics such as alcohol abuse or sexual behaviors that students may be engaged in. And then lastly, with that being said, students look up to us as role models, and if we can be kind of a guide for them, they would really appreciate our honesty and our ability to help them as well. And lastly, teachers need to be very vigilant with at-risk students because at-risk students have large correlations between risky behaviors such as drug use, teen pregnancy, poverty, and sexual abuse. Teachers can be the first line of defense or advocates for at-risk students. So it is important to be vigilant when having at-risk students within your classroom. The next type of learner we're going to be discussing is the advanced learner. And the advanced learner is a student who learns at a faster rate than their peers in one or more content areas. In many school districts and schools, they have programs for advanced learners such as the Gifted and Talented Education, also known as the GATE program, and Advanced Placement or AP in many high schools. In these programs, the advanced learner is able to be surrounded by other advanced learners and be taught at an appropriate level for their understanding. Some strategies that can help an educator with advanced learners is providing the appropriate content. This means providing more challenging reading material that focus on overall trends, and additionally using topics that advanced learners may find interested in. And next, we're going to cover the process on how we can implement strategies with advanced learners. This means encouraging flexibility, encouraging small groups, and then just having activities that challenges the overall advanced learner. And then lastly, providing the appropriate physical space for the best autonomy for advanced learners. Next, we're going to be covering students with disabilities. Students with disabilities have additional rights compared to those mainstream students. For example, they have the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which means they have the right for free and appropriate education. And then next, they have protections that they cannot be discriminated against. And additionally, they have less restrictive environments where they can thrive as any mainstream student will. And additionally, we have an individualized education program which helps students meet their specific needs. This is done more at a teacher level with appropriate consideration from school psychologists and parent involvement. So a couple of teaching approaches that we can use with children that have disabilities is having an inclusion approach. This means being able to mainstream children with other students and having them involved in group activities or in class lesson plans. In addition to that, we can break up the lesson into smaller steps where they are able to understand the concepts or context of our lesson for the day, in addition to breaking the lesson down into smaller steps, is using diagrams and using graphics with pictures so they can have a better understanding of the lesson. And then lastly, I feel like this is the most helpful approach, is trying to use a one-on-one approach. This means before class or after class, setting some time alone with that student so they can understand the concepts, and then just going over the lesson, like I said, in smaller steps or even with diagrams, even on a one-on-one setting. Although I feel like this is also the hardest or most difficult approach, because as teachers we're trying to focus on all students, but using a one-on-one approach can be a great tool to use in trying to help children with disabilities. In today's discussion, we went over the type of learners such as English learners, advanced learners, at-risk learners, and learners with disabilities. We had an overview of the type of expectations or the type of approaches we can use as educators in order to create an equity-based learning environment for all students.